You guys sit down. Close the laptop. Put the phone on Do Not Disturb. Because what I am about to break down for you in the next several minutes is going to rewire the way you have been looking at this entire Ashley Janae case from the very beginning. I am not exaggerating. I am not selling you a dream. I am telling you that everything you thought you understood about the timeline, about that video that has been spreading like wildfire across every single platform, about Joe McCann's so-called grieving press tour, and about where this investigation actually stands right now in May of 2026, all of it has been moving in a very specific direction. And that direction is not an accident. That direction was engineered. Listen to me very carefully because I have not seen a single content creator connect these dots the way I am about to connect them for you right now. First, let me kill the elephant in the room before we go any further. That video. You know the one. The one your cousin sent you on WhatsApp at 2 in the morning. The one your coworker slid into your DMs. The one that got reposted 12,000 times before anyone even bothered to verify a single frame of it. The video that supposedly shows surveillance footage of Ashley Janae and Joe McCann from inside that hotel in Zanzibar. I am here to tell you on the record without flinching, without softening it, without sugarcoating anything. That video is not them. It is not her. It is not him. It is not Tanzania. It is not the Zuri. It is not AI either before y'all start with that. It is a real recording of a real situation, but the people in that footage have absolutely nothing to do with this case. Nothing. Zero. Not a single pixel of relevance. The girl in that clip is being chased after allegedly snatching jewelry off a guy who had no clothes on him. That is the actual context. That is the actual story. And the only reason that clip got attached to Ashley's name is because somebody somewhere figured out they could ride the attention storm around this case and turn somebody else's tragedy into clicks. Now here is where I need you to lean in because most people stopped there. Most creators saw the video, said that's fake, that's not her, moving on, and went right back to recycling old talking points. But me? I sat with this. I sat with it for almost 48 hours straight. And the more I sat with it, the more something kept pulling at the back of my brain. Because the timing of that video going viral, the specific window in which it dropped, the way it spread across exactly the right channels at exactly the right moment, that timing is not random. That timing lines up with something else. And once I tell you what it lines up with, you are not going to be able to unsee it. Joe McCann is about to go on a press tour. I want you to read that sentence again. Joe McCann is about to go on a press tour. The man whose fiancée died under circumstances that nobody, not even the Tanzanian government, has been willing to call closed. The man who came home with his passport quietly returned to him. The man whose hedge fund reportedly lost something in the neighborhood of 85% of its value before any of this even happened. That man is now, according to multiple whispers from people I trust deeply, about to step in front of cameras, sit across from reporters, and start reshaping the narrative in real time. And the very first warning shot of that tour came not from him directly, but from his lawyer. Quote, Joe is relieved to be home where he can finally grieve for Ashley, the love of his life. We also wish to express our deepest gratitude to the authorities in Zanzibar and the dedicated men and women in the State Department for their professionalism during this ordeal. We have more to say at an appropriate time in the very near future. Kind regards, Ed. End quote. Let me read that to you one more time slower because every single sentence in that statement was crafted. Every word was placed on purpose. There is not a single accidental phrase in that paragraph. This is not a man writing from grief. This is a multi-million-dollar legal team writing from a war room. And if you do not understand the difference between those two things, you are about to get played. So let me walk you through this line by line the way I do, and you tell me in the comments if you see what I see. Joe is relieved to be home where he can finally grieve for Ashley. Stop. Pause. Hit the brakes. Finally grieve. Sir. Excuse me. What have you been doing for the past month? You have had a month. You have had weeks. You have had every single sunrise since this happened to grieve. So what does finally mean? Finally means he is admitting in a single word that grieving has not been the priority up until now. Up until now, the priority has been navigating police questioning, managing optics, coordinating with attorneys, and keeping the passport situation contained. Grief got scheduled for later. Grief got slotted in as a press release item. And the fact that the word finally slipped through tells me one of two things. Either the publicist who drafted this got sloppy, or the publicist who drafted this is signaling to a very specific audience that the legal pressure has dropped enough for performative grief to begin. Either way, that one word is a tell, and I do not miss tells. Then the statement does something else that I want you to pay attention to. It calls her Ashley. Not Ashley. Not Ashley Janae. Just Ashley. The version of her name printed on her birth certificate. The version her family uses. The version that signals legitimacy and connection. Because Joe and his team know that if he uses her stage spelling, the one she built her entire artist identity around, people will read it as performative. Using the birth name is a chess move. It says, I knew her before the spotlight. I knew the real her. I had access to a version of her you the public never met. And it is calculated to make you, the viewer, lower your guard. To make you think, okay, maybe this guy actually did love her. Maybe we are being too harsh. No, we are not being too harsh. We are being exactly the right amount of skeptical, and I am going to keep being skeptical, and I am going to keep walking you through every single sentence until you see the architecture for what it is. We also wish to express our deepest gratitude to the authorities in Zanzibar. Gratitude to the authorities in Zanzibar. Now think about that. If you were innocent, if you were a man whose fiancé died in a foreign country, would the dominant emotion in your public statement be gratitude toward the police force that detained you, questioned you, held your passport, and ran an investigation around you? Or would the dominant emotion be grief, anguish, outrage that you were even put in that position? Gratitude is the emotion of a man who needs to keep certain people happy. Gratitude is the emotion of a man who knows his cooperation with that police force, and their cooperation with him, has produced an outcome that suits his future. Gratitude is a thank you card to the people who could have made his life much, much harder and chose not to. I am not saying anything you cannot read for yourself. I am just pointing at the letters on the page. And the dedicated men and women in the State Department for their professionalism during this ordeal. This one is sneaky, and I almost missed it on the first read. Because if you know the backstory, you know that Ashley's father Harry, shout out to Harry, traveled all the way to Washington and personally requested that the United States government take a more active oversight role in this investigation. That is documented. That is on record. So why is Joe thanking the State Department? Joe is thanking the State Department because Joe wants every single person reading that letter, including the State Department itself, to subconsciously believe that the State Department is on Joe's side. That they have been kind to him. That they have been fair to him. That nothing about his treatment by federal officials has been adversarial. He is using the public statement as a soft handshake to a federal agency that could, theoretically, still cause him problems. This is not grief. This is diplomacy. We have more to say at an appropriate time in the very near future. That, right there, that single sentence is the green light. That is the starter pistol. That is the public-facing confirmation that the press tour I have been hearing about for over a week is now officially loaded into the chamber. Very near future. Not eventually. Not someday. Very near. As in, do not be surprised if you wake up on a random Tuesday morning, and Joe McCann is sitting across from a sympathetic morning show host with soft lighting and softer questions. Do not be surprised if a long-form podcast suddenly drops with him as the guest, and the host happens to be somebody who has historically been friendly to financial industry figures. Do not be surprised if a written profile appears in a magazine you trust, and that profile happens to humanize him in exactly the right places and skip over exactly the wrong ones. This is the playbook. This is how rich men with broken reputations come back. I have watched it happen so many times I can practically draw you the flowchart. Now here is where the unique angle comes in. Here is where I need you to take a deep breath, because I am about to say something that is going to sound like a stretch until you sit with it. That fake video, the one we started with, the one that got attached to Ashley's name and spread across every platform last week. I do not think that was an accident. I do not think that was just some random opportunist trying to farm engagement. I think that video, or at least the speed and shape of its spread, was a decoy. A decoy. A planted distraction. A noise generator. Designed to do one very specific thing in the very specific window of time between Joe McCann returning to American soil and Joe McCann beginning his press tour. Think about what that decoy accomplished. Number one, it consumed the attention bandwidth of everyone watching this case. Every creator, including me, every commenter, every casual observer, had to spend a chunk of mental real estate verifying, debunking, and explaining that the video was not real. That is bandwidth that is no longer available to scrutinize the actual statement from Joe's lawyer. Number two, it created a credibility tax on the entire grassroots conversation. Because once one piece of content tied to this case turns out to be fake, every other piece of grassroots content becomes easier to dismiss. The very next time somebody surfaces a real document, a real receipt, a real eyewitness account, the dominant response in the comments is going to be, remember that fake video though? Number three, and this one is the kicker, it tested the system. It showed Joe's team, whoever is advising him, exactly how fast and how far a piece of media can travel when attached to Ashley's name. That is reconnaissance. That is intel. That is a dry run. Am I saying Joe McCann personally uploaded that clip? No, I am not. I am being very careful here. I am saying the spread pattern of that clip is consistent with the kind of background interference operation that benefits a man on the verge of a reputation rehab tour. And I am saying that the people who benefit from chaos in the information environment around this case are very, very small in number, and I will let you do the rest of the math on your own time. Justice for Ashley. That math is part of the justice. Let me take you deeper on the decoy theory because I know somebody in the comments is already typing, "You are reaching." I am not reaching. I am reading a pattern. And the pattern has fingerprints if you know where to look. Watch how viral misinformation usually spreads. Normally, when a fake clip enters the public bloodstream, it has a chaotic organic shape. It hits one platform first. It bounces around in a few niche communities. It picks up steam slowly. Then it crosses over to the mainstream after the niche communities have already chewed on it for days. That is the natural shape of grassroots misinformation. Bottom up. Slow then fast. Messy. Now compare that to what happened with the fake clip last week. It did not start in a niche community and bubble up. It hit Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram in what felt like the exact same hour. The captions attached to it were eerily consistent, almost like they had been written by the same hand and then mildly paraphrased before posting. The accounts that pushed it the hardest were not accounts with a history of breaking news on this case. They were accounts that had no connection to this case at all until that exact day. That is not organic. That is a launch. That is a coordinated push. And whoever pushed it knew exactly which keywords and hashtags would put it in front of the people who would carry it the furthest the fastest. That is not luck. That is media work. And before anybody yells in the comments, why would Joe risk it? Why would his team take that kind of swing? Let me answer that for you. They would take that swing because the upside is enormous and the downside is almost non-existent. The upside is that the conversation around the actual case gets diluted at the exact moment Joe's lawyer drops the press tour signal. The downside is that the clip eventually gets debunked. So what? By the time it gets debunked, the bandwidth has already been spent. By the time creators like me are doing 48-hour deep dives into whether the video is real, Joe's team is already 3 steps ahead, planning the soft lighting interview, the Sympathy magazine profile, the carefully placed quote in a finance newsletter. The debunk does not undo the diversion. The debunk is part of the diversion. Read that line twice. The debunk is part of the diversion. Now let me bring in a piece of context that I have not seen any other creator weave into the conversation. There is a reason men like Joe McCann do not just hide. There is a reason they do not just take a leave of absence, vanish for a year, and come back when the temperature cools. The reason is that, in his world, time is money and money is trust and trust is everything. Every single day that passes without Joe McCann publicly speaking is a day that his hedge fund clients, his potential clients, his network of high net worth individuals, are quietly recalculating. They are not waiting for him. They are not pausing their portfolios for him. They are looking at other managers, other funds, other places to park serious capital. Every silent day is a day he loses ground he may never get back. So Joe cannot afford a year of silence. He cannot afford even 3 more months of silence. The press tour is not a luxury. The press tour is a financial emergency. And when you understand that the press tour is a financial emergency, you understand why the decoy was deployed. You understand why the lawyer letter was timed the way it was timed. You understand why the language was crafted the way it was crafted. None of it is grief. All of it is survival math. Let me come back down to ground level for a second because I do not want anybody to lose the thread. The facts. Let me give you the facts. Joe McCann is back in the United States. That is fact 1. His lawyer has released an official statement. Fact 2. The statement signals an upcoming press tour. Fact 3. The Tanzanian investigation, according to their own press conference, remains active. Fact 4. The autopsy results have not been publicly released by the official authorities. Fact 5. The real surveillance footage, the actual real footage from inside the Zuri property, has still not been released to the public. Fact 6. The United States has not closed any inquiry of its own. Fact 7. And Ashley's family, her parents, her father Harry, her loved ones are still pushing, still calling, still making sure that the pressure on both governments does not lift. Fact 8. Those are facts. Everything else, including my own theory about decoys and press strategy, is interpretation. But the facts alone are enough to tell you this case is nowhere near closed. I want to address something else that has been driving me up the wall this past week, because I have been getting it in my DMs, in my comments on every single platform I touch. People keep saying, it is over. People keep saying, Joe is home, the funeral happened, the family is done. Stop. Please stop. I am begging you. I am physically begging you through the screen. That is not how this works. Let me put this in language that anybody who has paid even mild attention to high-profile cases in the past few years will understand. Look at the Cassie Ventura situation. Look at the Diddy unraveling. Look at how long that took. Look at the David case in Los Angeles. 6-7 months a man walked free before the case against him came back with the kind of weight that means he is probably never seeing the outside of a cell again. 6 months. 7 months. Investigations do not move at the speed of your comment section. Investigations move at the speed of evidence. And evidence does not care about your YouTube fatigue. The Tanzanian police have already publicly confirmed that the investigation is open. They held a press conference. They named the fact that questioning occurred. They acknowledged international pressure. They have not announced charges, and they have not announced closure. That is the entire point. Active, open, unresolved. And before anybody comments but corruption. Yes, I know. I have talked about it. I have heard from people on the ground. I have heard from people in our South African audience, our broader African audience, who have written in saying, we know what the system looks like from the inside. We are not naive about it. I am not naive about it either. But corruption does not require silence from us. Corruption thrives on silence. International attention is the one variable that corruption cannot fully control. And that is the one variable we, the people in this comment section, get to influence. On the United States side, I am going to be careful with my wording because I know who watches my videos. I know who has been screenshotting them. I know who has been forwarding clips to people who get paid to manage Joe McCann's reputation. So let me say this in a way that is precise without being reckless. There is activity. There is activity on the United States side of this case. The federal government is not asleep on this. The State Department has been engaged because Ashley's father personally engaged them. The fact that Joe's own attorney name-checked the State Department in that quote letter is not a coincidence. You do not thank a body that has not been involved. You do not thank an agency that has not been a factor. They thank the State Department because the State Department has been a factor. Read between the lines. I cannot say more than that on camera, but I think you understand exactly what I am telling you. Ashley's body, for the people who keep asking, was returned to her family. There was a wake. There was a service. I was there for 2 of those days. I sat with her family. I broke bread with her family. I watched her mother stand up in a room full of grief and still find the strength to thank the people who showed up. Her body, however, was not buried. I want to be clear about that because I have seen creators online saying she was laid to rest in a way that implies burial. That is not accurate. Her family made a specific decision. Her family had a private autopsy performed on American soil. Her family is doing the work that needs to be done quietly with dignity, away from the cameras that have been trying to feast on their pain. And anybody who is in a comment section right now claiming that Ashley's family is doing nothing, that her parents are letting Joe walk, that her loved ones have given up, you are wrong. You are not just slightly wrong. You are catastrophically wrong. And I will say that as many times as it takes for the message to land. It is not the family's job to brief you on the autopsy. It is not the family's job to publish the investigative timeline for your weekly YouTube fix. The David case taught us this. So many creators made themselves look foolish during the David case in Los Angeles, screaming on camera about how the LAPD botched everything, about how Celeste would never get justice, about how the silence from law enforcement meant the case was dead. And then what happened? The case came back. The case came back with overwhelming evidence. The case came back in a way that effectively ended that man's life as a free human being. And every one of those creators who jumped the gun looked, in retrospect, like an emotional gambler who could not read the room. I am not making that mistake here. I am not going to scream into the void that the case is over, because I know it is not over. I know it is not over because I am still hearing things. I am still being told things. I am still receiving information from people who are in positions to know. And I am sitting on most of it on purpose, because the worst thing I could do for Ashley is to broadcast something prematurely and blow up an investigative thread that her family and the authorities are still pulling on. So please hear me when I say this. Give the family grace. Give them grace. Give them space. Give them the dignity of letting them grieve their daughter while simultaneously fighting for her, without having to also referee a comment section. They are doing more than you can see. They are doing more than they will ever be able to publicly disclose. And the fact that you cannot see it does not mean it is not happening. The fact that the autopsy results have not hit your timeline does not mean the autopsy is not in motion. The fact that no charges have been filed today does not mean no charges will be filed tomorrow. Tomorrow is a real day. Tomorrow keeps coming. Let me sit with the family piece for one more minute, because I do not think I have said this loud enough in any video so far, and y'all need to hear it. The family is not a press shop. The family is not a content creator. The family did not sign up to become a brand. Ashley's parents did not wake up one day, and decide they wanted to be the public face of a true crime news cycle. They were thrust into this. They were drafted into this. They were ripped out of an ordinary life and placed under a spotlight that none of us would survive if it shined on us with the same intensity. So when somebody in the comments section types, "Why is her mom not on TV every day? Why is her father not doing daily updates?" I want you to take a beat. I want you to imagine what it would feel like if your child, your sister, your cousin, was at the center of this and the entire internet was watching you process the worst news of your life in real time. You would not be doing daily updates either. You would be trying to survive Tuesday. You would be trying to make it to Friday. You would be trying to remember to eat. And the work, the real work, the work that actually moves the case forward, the calls to law enforcement, the conversations with federal agencies, the coordination with private investigators, that work would be happening in the spaces between meals, in the spaces between tears, and not a single second of it would look like content. So if it does not look like content to you, that is not because nothing is happening. That is because content is not what is happening. Justice is what is happening. And justice does not live stream. I also want to put on the record very clearly that the friends in Ashley's circle, the ones I have spoken with, the ones whose names I am not going to drop in this video for their own protection, are not asleep at the wheel either. There are conversations happening between friend groups, between extended community, between former classmates, that are quietly assembling a picture of the months and weeks before the Zanzibar trip. Receipts, text threads, voice notes, statements, memories of comments she made that, in hindsight, take on a heavier weight than they did at the time. None of that material is going to leak before it is supposed to. None of it is going to be teased on social media for likes. But it exists. It is being preserved. It is being documented. And one day, when the time is right and the legal posture is correct, you are going to hear about it. I am not promising you a timeline. I am not promising you a date. I am promising you that the body of evidence in this case is bigger than the public version of the case, and the public version of the case is already pretty damning on its own. Now back to Joe McCann, because the press tour deserves one more pass before we close this out. Here is what I think the rollout is going to look like, and I am giving you this now so that when you see it happening you can recognize it in real time. Stage 1 of the press tour is what I would call the human stage. The first appearances will be designed to remind the public that Joe is a man, a person, a creature capable of feeling. There will be soft interviews. There will be carefully chosen photographs. There will probably be a moment where his voice catches in his throat at a strategically placed mention of Ashley's name. There will be soft lighting, soft music behind clip packages, and soft questions from soft journalists. The goal of stage 1 is simple. The goal is to take you, the viewer, the potential investor, the potential client, and make you feel that Joe is grieving. Make you feel that judging him publicly is cruel. Make you feel that maybe the internet got this wrong. Stage 2 is what I would call the professional stage. Once enough sympathy has been laid down as a foundation, Joe's team will pivot to the financial conversation. Long-form interviews on finance podcasts, op-eds about resilience in markets, carefully chosen appearances at industry events. The unspoken message of stage 2 is, Joe is back. Joe is focused. Joe is the same operator he always was. The thing that happened over there has nothing to do with the work over here. Because remember, Joe is not trying to become an influencer. Joe is not chasing followers. Joe is trying to rebuild trust with people who write very large checks. People who used to write very large checks. People whose checks stopped clearing when his hedge fund cratered. People whose checks are absolutely not going to start clearing again as long as his name still smells the way it smells right now. Stage 3, and this is the dangerous one, is the legacy stage. This is where, if his team is smart and his team is smart, Joe will try to attach his future to a project or cause that softens his public profile in a long-term way. A foundation, a scholarship, a donation, something that, on paper, looks like generosity and, in practice, is reputation laundering. Watch for it. When you see it, name it. Do not let it slide unchallenged. Because the second the public stops paying attention, the second we get distracted by the next viral moment, the next case, the next scandal, that is the moment when men like this one quietly slip back into the rooms they were once kicked out of. And I refuse to let that happen on this one. Not on Ashley's name. Not on her watch from wherever she is. Not on mine. Let me give you one more layer on the press tour, because I want you to be a smart consumer of the content you are about to see. When the first sympathetic interview drops, I want you to ask yourself a very specific set of questions. Number 1. Who is the journalist? What is their track record on cases involving wealthy men accused of harming women? Have they historically been tough? Have they historically been soft? Have they accepted financial perks, paid trips, or sponsored access from financial industry figures in the past? Google that journalist before you watch the interview. Spend 10 minutes. It will save you from being emotionally manipulated. Number 2. Who is the platform? Is it a platform with a strong editorial standard? Or is it a platform that has historically allowed powerful men to control the framing of stories about them? Number 3. Watch the editing. Watch the cuts. Watch where the interview pauses, where it lingers, and where it moves quickly past something. Editing is where the lies live. A good edit can take a man who is panicking and make him look thoughtful. A good edit can take a man who is dodging and make him look introspective. So watch the seams. Watch the joins. Watch what is left out as carefully as you watch what is included. Number 4. Listen for the keywords. If Joe McCann uses the word tragedy more than the word Ashley, that is a tell. If Joe McCann uses the word I more than the word she, that is a tell. If Joe McCann talks more about his own healing than about her loss, that is a tell. The pronouns will tell you everything. The pronouns always tell you everything. And one more thing on this. When the press tour begins, do not give it your unfiltered, full attention engagement. I know that sounds counterintuitive. I know we are conditioned to lean in when content drops. But the worst thing you can do for this case is hand Joe's team a viral metric. Do not click the headline 10 times. Do not loop the clip back and forth. Do not stitch it. Do not duet it. Do not engage in a way that pushes it up the algorithm. Watch it once with your critical brain on and then come to a creator like me or any of the other creators who have been on this case from day one and let us do the breakdown together. Let the analysis travel further than the original. Let the receipts get more eyeballs than the rehab attempt. That is how grassroots wins. That is the actual war for narrative. And we are very much still inside that war. Let me say one more thing about the original argument theory because I see the question in the comments every single time I do an update. Here is what I personally believe, and I want to be clear that the word personally is doing heavy lifting in this sentence. Personally, I believe something escalated in that hotel room. Personally, I believe the escalation involved an argument, and I believe the argument was likely connected to one of two things. Either somebody saw something in somebody else's phone that should not have been there, or somebody made a financial demand or financial threat that crossed a line that, in that relationship, could not be uncrossed. Ashley was, by all accounts from people who knew her, a woman who was not afraid to speak. She was not the type to swallow a betrayal in silence. And Joe was, by all accounts from people who knew his world, a man whose entire identity was wired to the perception other people had of him. Pair those two personalities, put them in a foreign country in a private room in a fight, and you have the recipe for something to go very wrong very quickly. That is my read. That is just my read. The autopsy, the surveillance footage, the witness statements, the forensics, those are the things that will eventually decide the truth. Not my read. Not your read. Not any creator's read. The evidence will decide. And the evidence is still being gathered. What I will say with 100% confidence, because every credible creator who has touched this case agrees on this even if we disagree about specifics, is that Ashley did not do this to herself. We do not all agree on who. We do not all agree on how. But we agree on that. Ashley did not do this to herself. And anybody, any account, any platform, any voice that tries to push the self-inflicted narrative is either misinformed or has a reason for pushing that narrative, and you should ask yourself which one it is every single time you scroll past that take. So here is where we land, you guys. Here is the actual position as of today. The fake video is fake, but the timing of its spread is suspicious enough to ask questions about. Joe McCann is home, his lawyer has signaled a press tour, and the tour is going to roll out in stages that are designed to rehabilitate him with the people who matter to his bank account. The Tanzanian investigation is open. The American activity is real. The family is fighting. The autopsy is in process. The surveillance footage exists and has not been released. And the case, despite what some of the loudest voices on the internet keep yelling at you, is absolutely not closed. It is not even close to being closed. We are, at most, somewhere in the early middle of this story. The middle of a story is the part where most people get bored and tap out. The middle of a story is the part where guilty people pray you stop paying attention. Do not stop paying attention. That is the assignment. Last thing before I let you go, and then I promise I will hand the mic over to you in the comments. If you are new here, welcome. If you have been with me for a while, thank you. Thank you for forwarding. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sharing. You have no idea how much the algorithmic muscle of this community has been doing for this case. The reason TMZ went quiet for a stretch. The reason Joe's team stopped using daily press strips. The reason the energy around this story keeps reigniting just when it tries to die down. That is you. That is this community. That is grassroots attention doing what grassroots attention is supposed to do. So if this video resonated with you, if any single sentence in this breakdown made you sit up a little straighter, do the thing. Hit the like. Tap the bell. Drop a comment with what you saw that I missed, because I see y'all in the comments and I read y'all in the comments, and a lot of the leads I follow up on come straight from you. We are doing this together. And we are not done. Justice for Ashley. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace. Now I want to take one more detour, because there is a question I keep getting in the inbox and I have not addressed it fully on camera yet. The question is, why do you think the surveillance footage from inside the Zuri property has not been released yet, when the police already held a press conference about the case? That is a good question. That is actually one of the sharpest questions you all have asked me, and it deserves a real answer instead of a one-liner. So let me give you what I have, with the caveat that this is reasoning, not certainty. The footage exists. We know it exists because the authorities have referenced it in their own statements. The footage has, at minimum, been viewed by investigators. We know that because investigators have made comments about what is and is not visible in it. So the footage is real, it has been watched, and it is being held back. The question is why? And the answer in my read is one of three possibilities, and I want you to keep all three in your head at the same time. Possibility 1. The footage is being withheld because it shows something that is so clearly criminal that releasing it would compromise the integrity of an active investigation. In other words, the footage is evidence in a future prosecution, and if it leaks now, it taints juries, it tips off defense counsel, and it gives the wrong people time to coordinate stories. That is the most charitable explanation for the silence. It is also, in some ways, the most encouraging one because it implies that there is a prosecution in the future to protect. Possibility 2. The footage is being withheld because it is ambiguous. Because it does not clearly show anything one way or the other, and releasing it would only fuel more speculation without resolving the question. That is a less satisfying explanation, but it is also realistic. Surveillance footage is not always the smoking gun people imagine. Camera angles miss things. Lights wash things out. Timestamps can be unclear. So it is possible that the footage we are all waiting for would not actually settle the debate the way we want it to. Possibility 3. The footage is being withheld because somebody somewhere has been paid to keep it withheld. I do not say that lightly. I do not say that to throw fuel on a fire. I say it because the financial reality around this case includes a man whose entire professional life depends on his name being scrubbed clean, and money in the right hands can buy a lot of silence in a lot of jurisdictions. I am not accusing any specific official of accepting any specific payment. I am simply telling you that the possibility cannot be removed from the analysis until the footage is in the public domain, or until the investigation officially closes. You hold all three of those possibilities in your head at the same time, and you watch how the footage situation develops over the next several weeks. If the footage is suddenly released, ask yourself what changed. If the footage continues to be withheld, ask yourself who benefits from the withholding. Either path tells you something. Either path is a data point, and data points, when stacked together, eventually form a picture that is hard to look away from. One final word before I sign off, and then the floor is genuinely yours. Stay sharp. Stay patient. Stay loud when it matters and quiet when discretion matters more. This case is going to ask a lot from the people who care about it, and the people who care about it the most are the people who will need to keep showing up long after the algorithm has moved on. The algorithm will move on. That is a guarantee. Some other story will hit next week, and another the week after that, and the casual viewers will drift toward whatever the new dopamine source is. That is fine. That is human. But the people who carry a case across the finish line are not the casual viewers. The people who carry a case across the finish line are the ones who keep the candle lit in the quiet weeks. They are the ones who refuse to let a name disappear from the conversation. They are the ones who refresh the same comment threads, who forward the same updates, who keep showing up. That is us. That is this community. That is the assignment in front of us right now. We are the long game. Ashley deserves the long game. Her family deserves the long game. So lock in with me. I will be here. I am not going anywhere. I will keep digging. I will keep reporting. I will keep showing up for her until the truth is on the table. Justice for Ashley. Peace.